Betsy Morem here. I'm a co-owner of Morem Waller CPAs, and I'm very excited to introduce you to my friends at the gas station dispensary. It's the Sharp family. We've got Tucker, JD, and Dove. They run a successful operation out in Vermont and have years of industry experience. So they'll have a wealth of knowledge to share with you. And questions, please feel free to enter those into the chat and we'll save those for the end. So Tucker, JD, Dove, I'll turn it over to you guys.
Sure. I'll go first in introducing myself. My name is JD Sharp. I am Tucker's brother and Dove's husband. By way of experience, I've been in business building and entrepreneurship over the last 10 years, running and operating multiple unit retails, as well as a strong influence with a hospitality background. So while not all of my previous work was necessarily cannabis specific, it all has to do with retail and the functioning of retail outlets.
And I'm Tucker Sharp, and I have a master's in business administration, an MBA, and a real estate master's from Pepperdine University, and am an entrepreneur by trade, and am really pleased with our success in the cannabis business and the dispensary business so far, and just glad to be a part of this wonderful team supported by, my brother and sister-in-law, who are really experts in cannabis operations. So I can hand it over to Dove, who's really our team leader.
Hey guys, thanks so much for taking time out of y'all's Wednesday to be on with us. My name's Dove, and I'm clearly here with my two great family members. I got my husband JD and my brother-in-law Tucker. We started our own dispensary about coming up on 2 years ago now. But before that, I was working heavily in the Colorado market. I really kind of started up from the bottom as a part-time bud tender, and quickly made this my entire career, where I worked for two larger companies out there, both with heavily involved owners though, which really made the difference in both of those businesses. Where I really made my name for myself was we ended up taking over two bankrupt dispensaries at the second company I worked for. And I was given a lot of free reign to really get those stores back on track. And in 3 months, we were back in the black and profitable. It really sparked my passion for retail outside of the customer space, but really how to successfully implement new teams, implement new procedures that work for those communities. And it's been a really exciting journey that brought us here to our own store in Vermont, which was a market we are all very passionate about for different reasons, but a little bit of a smaller market when it comes to the country space. So it's got a lot of unique oddities, as I'm sure any markets that you might be involved with each do. The way that we came to help with consulting was when we opened our own store in Vermont. We realized with new markets that there was a lot of just lack of experience. We had a lot of great educated business owners, but when it came to the niche elements of running a cannabis business, a lot of people were a little bit in the dark, and there are very few places to turn. There aren't any degrees in this yet, and if they are, they're little add-on degrees. So having the experience that I developed out there, I didn't know was such a great asset then as I do now. And really all of this started quite organically for us, with other owners calling for very specific questions of, hey, how do we navigate this? How might we do that? And I'm always happy to pick up the phone and chat. And it got so popular that now we're here kind of offering our services to other folks, such as yourselves possibly. And it's been a really exciting journey to get here. Outside of myself, a little bit of what we have to offer is a little bit of a la carte program. I've noticed a lot of consulting firms that people turn to, it's a little bit all or nothing. And when a lot of business owners have very specific questions that they need answers, that's really where we can shine. Before I pass things over to Tucker, we are all encompassing between the three of us of what kind of services we can offer, from financial reviews to real estate help. And without getting too granular yet, we have a lot of different pinpoints that we like to really analyze. And ultimately, our goal is always going to be net profitability. And net profitability really can look like a lot of different visions in this industry. Some that may surprise folks, but it's very important that that is always our goal as a firm, to be able to really access for folks with the help of course, Betsy and Mark here at Morem Waller. We really would never be where we are without them. And they're just one of the many consultants that we can connect people with. So Tuck, I'm going to send it on over to you.
Sure. Thanks so much, Dove. And, just again to say, I'm so grateful to be supported by, Dove and JD, who just have a wealth of retail experience. My brother in the retail industry in a couple of different facets, including a butcher shop that he started and runs, and Dove with just a wealth of cannabis experience, and top to bottom being able to facilitate transactions and facilitate the operations of the store. And, a humble plug here for us, we're performing exceptionally well in Vermont, and really have outperformed a lot of our own expectations. And to Dove's point, part of what we want to be able to do is help others in the industry be able to achieve the same types of economic performance that we are. And so with that, I'm the CFO really of our group, and I focus more so on kind of the high level business operations for our company. And I have a real estate background as well. So part of what I can offer on the consulting platform here is an expertise in real estate to help folks be able to analyze leases, understanding and navigating the difference between and the benefits of gross leases, net leases, percentage rent leases, and really analyze the variable costs that have to do and are associated with the gross and net lease, cannabis specific leases, and so forth, because we really realize that there's quite a nuance when it comes to the real estate aspects of the cannabis industry, especially with retail locations, where some lenders don't want to have tenancy, have a cannabis dispensary as a tenant. So we offer a wide variety of expertise when it comes to negotiating leases, negotiating with lenders, negotiating with credit unions, and really advocating for cannabis dispensaries on behalf of ourselves and our clients. So other analysis that I like to focus on is our financial analysis, being able to really dig into the financials. And we get a lot of benefit from Betsy and the folks at Morem Waller to be able to have great insight into the financials of a business, and then be able to analyze that and extrapolate, key performance areas where, there's maybe low-hanging fruit or areas for improvement. And then, being able to bring in, Dove and JD with the operational expertise to really drive home, solutions to those problems. And I think that's one of the things that we realized kind of in our own experience and with consulting. A lot of consultants are great at identifying problem areas, but not all of them are great at implementing a solution that really works. And so from our own experience, and certainly from Dove and JD's experience, selling in retail locations, and Dove top to bottom being able to open locations, operate locations, and create a thriving financial environment in a retail location, we have a variety of tools and a lot of great solutions for improvement areas. So we really want to offer ourselves as a resource to help clients drive their revenue. And so part of what I do on that front and can offer is, a more analytical approach to be able to tee up our other tools to be able to, create the solutions that we're looking for. The last thing I would touch on is just being able to help really broker deals between suppliers, vendors, and our clients. We've had a lot of success in our market and Dove in, many markets, creating great relationships with cultivators, suppliers, vendors, but also implementing the agreements and the deals that need to be structured in order to have a very advantageous purchase agreement for ourselves and for our clients. So I'm going to turn it over to JD now, but just to tee him up, we're obviously not obviously, but we're not lawyers, and we're not accountants, but we have great business sense. And so while we can help structure deals, help negotiate deals, one of the things we also really like to do, and that we found a lot of success in with our own business, is implementing the team around us to help us execute. And we've got a lot of great relationships with attorneys, with marketing folks, obviously with accountants, and we're grateful to be here today because of that. But part of what we can also do is utilize our network to support our clients as well. And with that, I can turn it over to JD, who can elaborate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Tucker. I think one of the things that I like to highlight is something you said. A lot of times people bring in outside opinion because they want to build their brand and they get kind of this one size fits all. And I think where we're really unique is that our ownership is physically in the store frequently. So we have this great ability to bridge the gap between what looks great on paper, what helps the pro forma, right, at the end of the day, but what's a practical application of these resources, right? Over 10 years of business development, I am certain we have checked most of the boxes for things not to do. And I think there's a great value in that and really contributed to the success of the business that we have now and gave us a pretty clear path for moving forward that we're really excited to share with other people because it's so easy to get persuaded off of the path. It's really easy to lose sight of your own mission. And I think what we really are intending to do is to help complement your business and to help bring a new perspective so that you can look at the environment that you're in because we work in such a unique environment. Like my wife said, Vermont is a unique one. We're small, we're emerging. Obviously, we have a lot of experience coming in from a developed and mature market out of a multi-unit infrastructure that's fully integrated. But we also understand how this feels for somebody who's stepping off the block, is enthusiastic about the market, thinks that they can get a presence, but may not necessarily know how to go about it. And there's going to be a lot of input that individual receives, some of which is great, some of which sounds great, but isn't really applicable. And it's important to understand the difference in where your resources go, especially as you're opening your business, initiatives that are really going to drive the needle for you, and then how you cultivate, sustain, and mature your own customer base. Where we're very strong is, we come in and we try to connect as much as we can. And I think it doesn't really matter whether you're a 1-unit company or you're 10 units, you really have to grip your individual and your customer that comes in and you really want to retain them, right? And these customers have the ability to get in their car and go to any store. You have to give them a reason to want to come to you. And I think that's where we really shine. And that is as a result of great people that we work with. Obviously, Betsy and Mark have been critical in our success. But beyond that, we have a very deep bench of graphic designers, SEO, gentlemen, and social media marketing, and all the things that really standalone aren't necessarily a necessity, but when they all work in conjunction with a plan and with a mission, they can really help to reinforce your brand. And when people come in, they know they're dealing with X, Y, and Z, and they know that they're coming into your store, right? And I think it's very important that you build that right off the bat because this is going to be the foundation for your scaling, right? And I think it's really important that people keep in mind that, if you start successfully and you want to keep this growing, that there's going to be roadblocks that are going to come up, and we have a lot of experience hurdling those. It's an exciting market to be in. Like Tucker said, there's a lot of nuances, and there's a cultural component to this that I don't really think can be ignored. And I think having boots on the ground, being so heavily involved, it gives us a perspective that's more in tune with what the customer demand really is. We have a great understanding of markets and of brands in and outside of our state. we try to use that to our advantage as we look at our market developing. And I know Minnesota and that area is all just coming online right now. So I think there's going to be a lot of the same, sort of early beginning developmental growth chinks in the chain that can be a little challenging, but they seem to be somewhat homogenous amongst the whole country. You kind of go through the same issues. So we hope that we can bring some of that to whomever wanted to work with us, because at the end of the day, it's really easy to lose the path, and staying clear to your mission is much more easily said than done on a day-to-day basis. And I think that's about all I've got for you guys.
Well, very well said, JD. And I think, we've got a flyer, I believe that was circulated with, some of our pricing and contact information and so forth. So we would just encourage, those interested to reach out to us. We've got a lot of, opportunity to be able to help those improve. And so we'd be really glad to take calls and I think take some questions too at this point.
Awesome. All right, that's where I come into play here. So one of the questions that we got was, what is your percent of COGS as revenue? And I think maybe a good question, Dub, especially with your experience prior to, is, what do you typically see in the industry? What is a percent that dispensary owners should strive for?
Are we talking about just like overall net profitability?
The COGS is a percent of your revenue.
Oh,
So
percent of revenue. Yeah. So,
yeah.
I mean, my numbers better than I do at this point, Betsy, but we like to look anywhere between 25 and 45% easily. And then when it comes to actual net margin in store, I think it's very common in this industry where you start out with this great margin and then you end up having to squeeze as you progress to stay competitive. That is not the case if you are using your relationships correctly. If anything, over time, those margins should be going up instead of down. And it is a very common trend we see in this industry that we think we have to squeeze our margins to stay competitive. That is not the case. And there's multiple strategies that we can use to reverse that trend for sure.
Thank you. Average number of transactions per day.
For us
Sounds like they
personally?
got, yeah,
So
or just, what?
So in general, that's really going to matter on how many business hours you are open and how many staff is going to be on the floor. For us in our store, we are open 10 to 7 and we average anywhere from about 175 to 250 on a regular daily basis. What really is going to come into play though is average cart. That is even more important than your average number of transactions. You can have a store making twice the amount of money with you if their average cart is higher than yours. So picking which kind of store you want to be, there are stores that are going to be very high volume, but your average cart's going to be very low. Those stores work, but you are going to be adding a lot more staff to sustain them. So I love a higher average cart with a really steady average transaction count. That's very key. I have, however, had a lot of experience in heavily tourist markets where you're going to be definitely adjusting some outside things during your off season if you're in a high tourist area. So for example, that could be a ski area where December you might be doing triple business than May. All of those things have to be accounted for to make sure that you're staying afloat and not losing your shirt on those months where things can get a little bit slimmer. All can be done with appropriate staffing and preparedness, but it's really fun to get into those kind of strategies and issues. Those are things that I love to look into and really strategize. And Betsy knows because I talk her ear off about it all the time, but those are really issues I love to target. I would say a goal for any transactions during the day, there's going to be so many things that go into that, but I would love to see any store doing at least 50. If you're doing under that, you're going to have some issues, especially when it just comes to maintaining your bills. But really, we also want to be looking at heavily of your returning customer base. If you're just a store that's people are passing through, that's okay. But the stores that are going to always be doing better than you, or when we're hitting that anywhere from 1,500 to 5,000 returning regular customers.
Super insightful. Thank you, Dove. We did get another question I think I can answer because it's regarding the question is, will Minnesota cannabis retail shops need to be cash only until cannabis is rescheduled to a Schedule 3? And then the second part of that question is, will Minnesota banks and credit unions provide banking services to cannabis retail shops? So the first part of that question, cash only. So Dove and JD and Tucker, obviously would love to have you, explain what your experience has been with accepting forms of payment. But unfortunately, if cannabis is rescheduled to 3, that does not mean that that you can bank freely. So the banking issue is still in play, even if it is rescheduled. What rescheduling does affect is 280E, which of course would be beneficial for the industry because the industry does have such a high effective tax rate. But I can tell you that there are banks that do bank with cannabis clients. There are a couple banks in Minnesota. One that I can name off the top of my head is Bridgewater Bank. In fact, I believe they have a cannabis banking section on their website now. So I definitely encourage you to go check that out. Mark, I see Mark popped on, so I don't know if you wanted to add something to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And in Minnesota, yeah, like you said, the banking issue is not going to go away unless there is some federal legislation that specifically addresses banking. But the best thing to do is to find a bank that is cannabis friendly. I think you guys, Dove, Tucker, JD, you work with a bank in Vermont that is one of the few that is very positive, pro cannabis. Makes your life a lot simpler to know that you're with a bank that is kind of proactively in favor of cannabis. I've seen, not just in Vermont, but in other states as well, even in Minnesota, where in Minnesota, cannabis is not really legal yet. But even stores that are selling hemp-derived cannabis that is federally legal are still facing banking issues. And banks have the absolute right to say, hey, you have the word cannabis in your business, I'm going to shut your bank down. And that is honestly one of the bigger issues that businesses face, that it doesn't, at the face of it, doesn't seem like it's a huge issue. But trust me, if you get your bank shut down, it makes your life really miserable until you get set up again.
Yeah, I could just say, oh, sorry, Dove, you go ahead.
You're good. I said yes, Mark. Any avoiding of asset seizure at all or freezing, we are all pro that. Our experience in Vermont, I'm sure a bank, and usually they're local and more community banks, such as credit unions and stuff like that. My guess is, because it sounds like rec sales in Minnesota are hopefully going to be finally open and rolling at some point in 25, even though we don't have a date yet. Those conversations are probably started already. It would definitely be okay to start talking to different banks and just getting that initial feedback. You'll already be able to kind of know a little bit just from their first reactions of where to go. And as far as cash only versus debit, I can say right now you will be able to process with cashless ATMs. There's no state that has been able to block that. However, there are pros and cons to each. I'm always happy to dig into those. In Colorado, I ran debit in all of my stores very successfully with a great processor that is not attached to a POS, which is good to know. But in Vermont here, we actually ended up going cash only and have been incredibly profitable with cash only. Don't underestimate the power of that ATM. They can be wonderful for you as well. So happy to always chat with that further of what really is going to fit your area and your business best. And what makes it easiest for you as a business owner. That's going to be a huge point too. Customers like consistency. That is what they love no matter what. So as long as we have consistent working machines, when it comes to debit, thumbs up. Or a consistent cash only business, people will be okay with. I know it's surprising, but it is. One trap I urge business owners to not fall into is every debit card processor says that your average cart is going to explode if you bring on debit. From personal data in all sorts of stores in all sorts of markets. That is not actually very true. That does not mean it's not a wonderful convenience and might fit perfectly for your store, but be wary of those sales tactics. They are all over of these 40% increases and 20% increases. The numbers are very arbitrary and are not actually usually based in reality of the sales.
And I would also just add, it's a great point to just reinforce and just mention again that we're available to consult at all stages of the process. So, onboarding, making sure that you're set up with the right bank and helping determine what the right decision might be. And then also for, operations that are ongoing and trying to, improve an area that may need some extra help or an extra eye. We can assist through all phases of the process, through onboarding, operations, and even dispossession of the business, as far as it relates to trying to help analyze the valuation and locate equity sources or acquisition potentials for existing business.
Thanks, Tucker. Another question that we got is related to store size. So the question is, what is your smallest store? What is your largest store? The gas station is one store, but Deb, you worked in multiple stores. So can you speak to kind of is there a sweet spot or kind of what people should be looking?
This is actually, thank you for whoever asked this question, something I'm super passionate about when it comes to store size and layout, which all speaks to customer flow and intimacy of the transaction. So to put it in perspective, our top grossing, and that includes net profitability as well as average transactions per day at a store out of the company in Colorado that I worked for, was 900 square feet. And we were doing about 500 transactions a day out of that store. So I am super pro smaller the better. I see a lot of companies come in and grab very large square footage leases. What that does sometimes, if that is not effectively used square footage, not only are you going to be dragging on just your utilities of heating that kind of place in the winter, but the customer can get very lost on a large square footage floor plan. I think you can look at, is it Planet 13 in Las Vegas? That's, losing money every day, and it's 100,000 square feet. It's a great example on a very extreme scale, but when the customer is not directed in a new market, it's very difficult for them to really pinpoint what they want, and they end up kind of just circling the floor. It also doesn't give a lot of ways for your team members to start interacting, building that relationship. And the number one word there is education. I think people always love to overestimate the customer education when they walk into a retail store. And that is really, in my opinion, what's always going to make a difference is getting that interface with your sales professional. The larger the store, the less likely that is to happen. And the more time the customer has to make their own decision instead of a guided decision by one of your sales professionals. So we are right now at 1,200 square feet. You do have to get a little creative when it comes to storage and office space and all that kind of fun stuff. But ultimately, I would look small. Some of the most profitable stores are going to be on very small square footages. It really adds to that intimacy. You're also never going to have extra staff there just to fill a space. We really want to be strategic on how your space is used, and that goes right from check-in to sales floor to checkout. It should be very streamlined and seamless. No empty rooms, no corners we have to fill with useless plants. We want it to be all your product, your brand, and your sales professionals doing that work for you. So I'm a huge component of smaller the better. As far as store setup, there are horizontals, there's long and strip malls. All of those can be wonderful in those circumstances, and including standalone buildings. A lot of fun with those, as we have right now. But yeah, smaller the better. Big size does not equal big profitability from my personal experience.
Well, and just to echo some of Dove's points there, I think efficiency is the word I would look for when you're looking at your space. I would let your location drive where you're looking, and then your space is second, and then the efficiency of the use of that space is very important. Like Dove said, on an average day, we're doing somewhere in that, just call it 200 transaction range, which is very manageable. Our retail front is really only about 700 square feet. But on our busy holiday weekends, on 420, which everybody knows is insane, we're still managing and very capable of processing triple those numbers with the same amount of staff, because our floor and our store is laid out in a way in which no matter what the capacity is, we're able to move people through in a very fast manner. And it's ergonomic and easy to use for the customer. At the end of the day, simple is always better. And I think there's a lot of pitfalls that can be avoided that can turn a store that has 7 people on staff and doing 200 transactions and it feels clunky and non-efficient, to a 4-person store that can run it more efficiently and give a more satisfactory customer experience.
I think it's also important to remember cannabis is still taboo. Doesn't matter how many states legalize, there are still so many stigmas associated with it. Bigger stores can feel even more intimidating to that newer customer who really could be your potential weekly Friday customer for years to come. The more intimate, and I hate to use the word privacy because no matter what, it's a sales floor, but you really want to be able to attach that person to your store as easy as possible. It's a very nerve-wracking experience buying cannabis for the first time, whether in a new store. It doesn't matter how many times you've been in there or how many times you've purchased before, it still invokes a little bit of feeling of nervousness that you will notice on your retail floors. So I find with a smaller size, it really starts to break down those walls for the customer a lot easier.
Which then leads you in, obviously, to wanting to find and develop good teams that function well. I mean, I think that that's ultimately, that's our side of the counter, and is going to be all of your guys' sides of the counter, is finding people who work well, they work efficiently, and they work well together. You're only as good as the sum of your components. And Dove and myself and Tucker as well, we pride ourselves on building very strong, very dynamic teams. And I think you'll find that you're always better off having great people than more people.
Lots of great information. We do have a couple more questions, if that's okay with you guys. We'll keep rolling here. So Matt asks, how's the advertising and marketing in Vermont? I guess what can you do and what can't you do?
You
BC
can't
is
do very
consistent.
much, unfortunately. So obviously you have the parameters of what a lot of the platforms will allow you, the Facebooks, the Instagrams of the world. They have their own internal deadfalls that are going to get you regardless. You go through their algorithm, and if you're a cannabis related business, there's going to be times where you run into issues there. So we focus ourselves more on business to business initiatives that we think are ultimately going to drive it and that are more impactful in target demographics for us. For instance, where we're located, we're very close to Killington Mountain. It's a big driver for us. It's a market that we don't have a ton of exposure in by proximity. So we spend a lot of our time and a lot of our efforts reaching out to that group because it's great tourist traffic, but it's also great regular traffic. We in Vermont, and I know every state is unique in this regard, is we technically have to get all of our marketing materials approved by our control board. So that can be a little challenging. Obviously, there are things that we want to do that are fun and we think are exciting to our customer base, but it is a third-party audit, and unfortunately, they don't always agree with that. So you have to be flexible, and you have to get not too hung up on some of the marketing front. But I think that there's lots of creative ways that actually ultimately be far more impactful than getting an Instagram view that we're always happy to talk about. And I think that those are situational and based on the environment that you're in.
And to that point, and Dove, I'm sure, has much more to add to this, but I would just say 2 things. Also, part of where some of our expertise lies, certainly kind of in real estate as well, is identifying opportunities for things like signage, navigating the process from municipalities to secure advantageous signage for locations, and really trying to take a design approach to differentiate a space, because curb appeal, can be really significant. And even small things, we striped our park with green parking striping. And so, that even is just a little bit of a differentiator for ourselves that makes things stand out. So when it comes to analyzing a capital budget for a business, to look at, areas where expenditure, really can be accretive to the overall functioning of the business, is an area that we, specialize in, and that can add to some of the marketing that we do, as well as also partnerships with other local vendors and folks that can come out for events. And I'm sure Dove has much more to opine on that than myself, but just wanted to add 2 cents there.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of value, obviously, in promoting your business from within. It's something that's talked about a lot in the hospitality world, but you have a great opportunity with each and every regular customer to get that person to bring somebody else in with them. The word of mouth in our business is really, really powerful. And if you can incentivize somebody to bring somebody in, if you can incentivize that person to come back, in my opinion, that's still marketing. You're still trying to grow your customer base there. And using your existing customer base to spread the word is much more valuable than I think a lot of people give it credit for.
Yeah, to be very direct, Matt, we have some of the strictest advertising laws in the country here in Vermont. There's no billboards across the state to begin with, never mind a cannabis one. Everything has to be approved via our board. And unfortunately, everything has to have a very long warning at it. So even when they said, oh, radio ads, that's going to be fine, by the time you've spit out the entire warning label, your ad space had already been eaten up. So that really created a lot more of creative ways, like my boys have talked about here, of how we really marketed through the store and direct to customer. In Colorado, it was very different. We did have a lot different marketing rules. So we utilized, even things like newspaper, we did bingo. There's a lot of stuff you can get going. Having an Instagram is important, but do not count on it, is really where, I would head with that. And I'm always happy to talk marketing. It's really fun. Everyone's market is completely unique and different. But where I would always love to encourage people to start is think of other 21 and older businesses. Those are going to be your best friends when it comes to just local marketing. Even a coaster at a bar can go a really long way.
Such a great point. And, also just to say, fun things in the store for the customer. We've had a lot of success with just little tips and tricks that we have from an operational perspective in the store to keep customers engaged. And then, to JD's point and to Dove's point, to leave, with something to say to somebody else about, hey, have you been down to the gas station or, XYZ location? They're doing XYZ inside, go check it out, and make the transactional experience fun. It doesn't have to be just a, transaction. It certainly wants to be quick and efficient, but can be fun as well.
And I just have to say, because I don't think the Sharp family is going to say it, but they've done such a great job with their branding, and they've built such a loyal client base that they've actually had, I believe, 2 people get the gas station logo tattooed on them. So
we have 2 currently, and 1 is slated for next week. So we're bumping that number up as quick as we can.
Yeah. No, there's your brand can do a lot of work for you, which I think is what Betsy tried to eloquently say there. Your brand is really your brand and your signage are your first always available marketing tools. Investing in having a sign that lights up overnight, is those little penny costs are things that can really change your business, especially when you're new and emerging.
all right, one more question. So we're running up on time here, but can you guys speak to it all? What is a good average lease with CAM and square foot? And I know this is going to be, of course, it largely depends on the region, but any guidelines you can maybe share?
Yeah. So with average leases, first of all, you need to really think about what your longevity is in the industry. I would say I would always want to lock myself in for at least 5 years, unless you are really not sure or really not confident, then you could take something a little bit lower. But 5 for me would always feel like, okay, I've got room to build here. I would look at specifically hunting landlords that already own their building outright. You're going to have a lot more flexibility there, and not going to be absolutely overcharged with your leases. Second is with, if you're thinking about Minnesota real estate specifically, I don't know the exact COGS on average prices per this or that. Expect to take probably 2x being a cannabis business in reality. One thing though that I would recommend is if you can buy a place, buy it. If you can, and that's really where Tucker can help popping in there. But I would say in a high end market, we paid anywhere in Colorado from 5 to 40,000 for unit leases. Now, when I say 40, that's in Aspen, so on the main street. So that's a very niche, there are only so many places in the country that even are like that. But where we were paying 5, 6, and 9,000 a month were towns where average income per household was about 120,000 a year. To put that in a little bit of perspective for you, I would encourage you to shop landlords. I would encourage you to lock in leases sooner than later. If a building has been sitting empty for a long time, yes, there is probably a reason, but if you've got a little time to do some elbow work with it, it can really, really change the dial for you.
And that's part of what we can assist with. Each market is different, and understanding, understanding the competitive landscape in the market, to understand the comps, to see where an appropriate market rate is, and then structuring a deal, assisting in structuring a deal that can be most advantageous to to the tenant, to our client, is where we can be really helpful. So that can be, understanding the difference between the benefits of a net lease and a gross lease, and where the combinations of a gross or net lease with a percentage rent deal can also be effective for a retail operator. A lot of what our suggestion would be here is to do a pro forma operating model and understand the expectations of how we expect to perform, and then we can back into what an appropriate rental rate would be to make sure that you're successful. Right. So we can do cash flow projections, we can do operating expense projections, we can get down to a EBITDA number that will allow you to be able to, have a place to plug in what you can afford for rent. Because the last thing that we want to see people do is make some of the mistakes that we've seen in the market, which is paying too much for rent, and then you ultimately end up, in a really challenging place to get out of. So what we can do is be helpful in analyzing that process to help identify what a good rent number would be. Each market is so different, where some people are calculating rent per foot on a monthly basis. Some markets like New York do it on an annual basis. So trying to, triangulate national numbers and use national data points don't really work as well as really digging into the weeds in the local market, and getting hyper local with the comps as far as understanding, what the right rate for any potential individual store is to pay. And then on the back end of that, kind of how what Dove mentioned, which is really being able to assist with a cost versus buy analysis, to be able to help understand what is the right decision for you to make. Do the benefits of renting outweigh some of the costs of buying? Or, to Dove's point, if we can help negotiate a deal to purchase a space, or we can help identify a space, that's one thing we're really great at in all my years in real estate, is identifying opportunities, even off-market opportunities that are unavailable to the market, helping locate opportunities, owners, facilitating a transaction, and then helping understand how we should structure that. Does this want to be a lease? And there are a lot of places where that's of a benefit. That would be areas where, capital expenditure could be really high, whether that's snow, and you have a variety of different operating expenses. And in which case, a gross lease is a great place to go. but that's one thing we'd love to really apply our expertise and our help in, is being able to dig in and answer some of those challenging questions, all of which we've dealt with many times.
And that goes as granular right down to zoning. Every community, town, municipality is going to, they love to talk about cannabis zoning. That's always going to be something that you are having to think about when you are location scouting too. Is my zoning realistic? Can I get this through? So those are all places where, we're happy to help, but predatory leases are very common in this industry. They love to take advantage of cannabis businesses because we are not federally backed and insured. There are many ways to avoid that, and getting an extra eye on it, whether it be from us or someone else, please do that for yourself before putting pen to paper on any cannabis lease. Sometimes the lease can make or break a really awesome business. But when you are giving away percentages of sales as rent and X, Y, and Z, you see some really crazy things. And I would, if I could avoid that for any of our clients, that would be huge for us. That's a win right there.
Right. And the percentage deals come down to even, other specifics under that. Is this a percentage rent that's just a straight percentage of gross sales? Is this a percentage deal that's, has a break even point, where after such, break even point, then we start to share in percentages? So that's the kind of back end analysis that we can really help with to determine, what's most advantageous for you, and really tee you up to have, as much success as possible.
All right, final question, because this is a fun one. How did you guys, well, they've all been fun, but how did you land on the name The Gas Station?
So
That was all Tucker.
yeah, that was our incredible brother-in-law. What Tucker did was really not only read incredible market read on the gas station, but the building originally was a Texaco that was built in, I think, 1946. And we had a lot of fantastical ideas when we were sitting down and building our brand, of renovations we wanted to do, and this, that, and the other. And all of a sudden, when we were putting pen to paper on, we actually had a whole nother brand already developed before we fell on the gas station. I think a couple of our accounts might even still be under that old name. That's how far along we were. But when we really started to pick up a broom and get in the space, all these changes that we thought we were going to make, we realized kind of the beauty in our store was all of the old quirks that the gas station originally had. And even though there had been tons of different tenants throughout the building, we had never, a lot of the stuff had never really been changed. We still have a bathroom that's around the back, just like the old gas stations would be. So we kind of went with a less is more. If it's not broke, let's not fix it. And that's exactly what we did with the gas station. And it's really resonated with people. That kind of speaks though to how specific our market is. We knew we were going to be a one store operation in Vermont. We are legally not allowed to own two in the state of Vermont. So we leaned even harder into where our building was and kind of the beauty in it. We are also in a town that is very nostalgic. If everyone could go back to how it was in the 70s, that's how they would love for it to be where we are personally. So kind of getting on that nostalgia, and everyone had a memory of bringing their truck here and this, that, and the other thing. So the gas station really resonated with them. There are other gas station dispensaries throughout the country. We are not the only one, but it really spoke to the area. And honestly, we saved a lot of money on construction costs by going with the gas station. So shout out Tucker there, instead of rebranding the way we thought we were going to.
And thank you, Dove. And I would just say, and that was a big part of it, right? Was looking at the costs, making an analysis, and like I said, looking at the market, and really allowing our financial analysis and our market analysis converge, where we were able to say, hey, who's our target demographic? Who's our target customer? Who are we really trying to get in the front door of the store? what is not going to resonate with those customers. This isn't a market where a super clean med store like location is going to thrive. How can we, make our customers comfortable? And also, what's the best use of our funds? Because we've spent a lot of money in the store, but we put the resources where they were most needed, right? Into our point of sale systems, right? Making sure that we have the right inventory, getting our signage, and doing things that we realized in our evaluation could be better drivers of our operations and our business, and save a few bucks along the way. And that's what we want to help others do, is be able to drive the top line and make decisions when it comes to the operating and capital budgets that can be really effective in improving performance.
Absolutely, Tuck. Couldn't agree more. To put it in perspective, we talked about finally redoing the floors this year, and we had a customer uproar against it because they're so attached to now how it used to be and what it looks like now. So if you happen to stumble across, more of a vintage building, don't be afraid of it. That's really what we learned through this one. Do not be afraid of it. Lean into it harder than ever. If there was a bakery that used to be fantastic in the 80s that people still remember, say, hey, take the left at this old place, run with it because it's already nostalgia and people are already more comfortable with that space.
That's great advice. All right. Well, we've run out of time. This has been a really fun conversation. Thank you, JD, Tucker, and Dove, for sharing all your insights and answering everyone's questions. Follow the gas station on Instagram. It's gas station VT. Of course, you can follow us as well, Morem Waller CPA. And this webinar will be up on our website under the resources section alongside our previous webinars as well. So we'll be sending some follow-up information later today or tomorrow. But thank you so much, guys, for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.